Word. Great. It's just exactly 10. I'll wait a minute.
Yeah.
So Cecilia, that background is a very talented young woman who basically works for an educational cruise ship through the Salish Sea, and she was one of the fellowship winners from the Women Divers Hall of Fame thing. And this is one of her creative talents, and she's never been to Indonesia. I'm trying to get her hooked up with a similar her counterpart, a lady Indonesian who has a very interesting setup for communicating reef health and protecting the reef and that sort of stuff. But anyway, she whips them out quickly.
And she wants some connection. My college roommate, and I just visited him on my trip around the country, was the director at NOAA responsible for reef research, and Bill's retired, but he's still writing papers. So if you want a connection with somebody who has a lot of in-depth on reefs, I'm sure he can. I can make that connection for you.
Sure. Yeah.
Great. Shall we get started? There's 8 of us. So I'll call that a quorum, and we'll see if we get a couple more coming in on the slide soon. So welcome to the North Bay Electric Auto Association's monthly meeting for June. We don't have Caleb, but hopefully he will join, because we have a unique opportunity to present to you today. Here's Caleb. Great. It was kind of an exciting and fun month in that we had Jerry back and involved in the process, and also Caleb and Cecilia and soon Zeno and I are all contributing to our news curation. So we have kind of a no speaker kind of meeting, but kind of an exciting dynamic and perhaps a little bit loose and a little less curated than in the past, but it's been fun to collaborate on the news. So today I mentioned that we don't have a presentation this month, but we're kind of continuing in the pattern of talking about chapter business and some of the goals that we brainstormed earlier in the year for 2022 to just keep our eye on that and some of the ideas that we had. So that will be our meeting agenda. So introductions, who are you and how do you get around? Bruce, would you like to start?
Oh, my microphone's working already. Yes. I'm a former resident of Sonoma County. I think everybody ran it, well, not literally, but has run into me in the past. And I'm up here in San Juan Island. I retired up here permanently after my wife's passing, and have been on and off and on trying to build enthusiasm for electric vehicles up here. And I'm trying to reduce my count from, at one point I had 7 battery electric vehicles. I still have the Smith truck that I brought up from Thunderstruck, and the Ford Ranger pickup. Maybe I could connect with some people afterwards. I'm looking for help with some error codes that are being thrown to this pickup truck that's got one of Lanny Thomason's rebuilt lithium ion phosphate battery pack, and basically it's not listed in the Ranger manual. So I'm running out of ideas. They don't have a tester, but they do have a computer that can pull the codes. And yeah, I'm going to try to get a hold of Lanny and see if he's got any suggestions this afternoon. So anyway, I get around mostly with my Model 3. We did have a little Opalco, our community co-op, had an event on Thursday, which should have some pictures posted. We had a great turnout. Even Martin Eberhard showed up. It was kind of like a Woody Allen moment. He was in the crowd, and some people were talking about Teslas and the old Roadster and the one that got to the moon, and he was like standing there with his son and son's friend. So that was kind of cute. But anyway, he's apparently spending half time up here and half time in the Bay Area. I'm not sure what his projects are down there now, but he's yeah.
So he's
in
not
and
in
out.
LA anymore?
Pardon?
He's not in LA anymore. He had moved to LA after a while.
Could be. I might have that wrong. I just assumed he was going back and forth from the Bay Area, but he's got 2 roadsters. He's got number 2 and then a newer one, probably the end of the run, and he's using the newer one for his commuting car, and he's bringing his other one up here sometime. So I offered him an opportunity to acquire VIN number 101, which is Alan's, just because it'd be great promo. I've got a custom license plate, vanity plate for it up here. That's essentially the same one that Alan has, only with it's a custom plate made from a well-known artist up here. It's got like a background of madrona trees and orca whales, and it's TSLA 101, which is the same number that Alan used in California on California plates.
Nice. Jerry, you're on mute.
It even pops up on the screen, says, you're talking and you're on mute.
Yeah.
I'm Jerry Glazer. I'm driving my 2018 Leaf, and it just left the driveway because it's taken the longest time for me to convince DJ that, hey, take the Leaf whenever you go someplace. So by and large, we use the Leaf for about everything at this point. But she keeps looking for the longer range vehicle that'll do more than 160 miles so that she can make it down to the South Bay and then back up again without having to think about charging along the way. That's it.
I have to say that DJ might represent what I hope is happening, which is if someone is delayed long enough in getting their next car, they might switch from an ICE vehicle to an EV.
Well, and she's pushing me because I've been selling the idea of an EV6, even though I haven't driven one, but I've talked to people who have now driven the EV6 and they all think it's fantastic. All the specs on it are great. And I've looked now, there's a good video on the web covering the different models, and there's different features in them. Like some have heat pumps and some don't have heat pumps. I can get some of the features I want in one, but not in the other. So it's an interesting vehicle, and it also will handle what's coming up with VGI. And so I'm interested in joining in on the pilot for VGI that PG&E is going to be holding.
Great. Dave Heacock?
I'm Dave Heacock. I live in Fairfield. I have a 85 electric Avante that I'm doing some upholstery on right now. And I also drive my wife's 2007 Saturn Vue hybrid, which gets pretty decent mileage and doesn't have any electric miles, but gets decent mileage for 2007.
Cecilia?
I'm Cecilia. I currently drive a 2018 Model S 75D. For those of you who were expecting me to say Model 3, my Model 3 is currently getting serviced. It's getting its rear motor replaced under warranty.
Did you get your Model S from Enterprise Rental Car?
Yeah, it's a loaner from Tesla, but it does look like it's an enterprise vehicle.
I'm so glad that you were able to get an EV.
Yeah, me too. I'm also glad to have gotten a car at all.
Yeah. Mike?
Hi, everybody. McDowell, Santa Rosa, still getting around on my 2011 Leaf and our 2020 Kia Niro. So last month I was in back east, New Jersey, and so if you don't know, New Jersey is one of the few places remaining that they require attendants to pump gas in your car. You can't, nowhere in the state you can pump gas yourself. But since we're interested in New Jersey, we watch the news occasionally for New Jersey, and they were clamping down on some gas stations that were charging $2 extra a gallon to pay by credit card. And this is really interesting because the behavior is, you just pull into the gas station, you hand the attendant your card, everybody just looks at that cash price when you pull in, and you don't know that you're getting the gas pumped for you, and there it's ranking up gas at an extra $2 a gallon for a credit card. So more and more things to just say, get people to drive EVs, and you don't have to be kind of held hostage to piracy at the pump.
Yeah. Zeno, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Zeno Swijding. I live in Sebastopol. I drive a convection oven. Anyhow, that was a joke. It was probably not a good joke because nobody is really laughing. Yeah, so I still have my Honda inside, but I'm slowly electrifying everything, and my car still works fine. It makes, I don't know, 56 miles a gallon still, so I'm not using it a lot. Mostly in town I'm trying to ride my bicycle, which is not an e-bike, it's still a regular bike. And last month was bicycle month, so I felt extra encouraged to bike to the store. And Tor is watching here, and he's my kind of I don't know what the word is, but I'm aware of his presence. Yeah, so I'm electrifying, and probably the next thing will be some kind of heat pump for my hot water.
Tor's my role model too. Mark?
Let me unmute here. Excuse me. Well, a month ago today, we got our Ioniq 5. So we've been enjoying that this all month. And I got another convert to electrical energy, though, when I sold my 2013 RAV4 to a friend, a lady, and she is so ecstatic to drive an electric because her young kids, who are 16 and I think 13, have been pushing her for the last several years, saying, "Mom, you need to get an electric car." And she says, "Well, when I get rid of my 2017 minivan." But then this came up, and so it's been fun to see her posts or her text to me, how appreciative she is of that car. So she's enjoying it, just like we're enjoying our car now, and it can go 300 miles. It's a rear-wheel drive. And I have to say the 300-mile range, I think, is right on for around town. It's half of that's on the freeway and half of it's on an old redwood or something like that. So it's done really, really well. As I learn all the safety features and all the buttons and things on there, even though I knew about electric cars, this is different. So
there's all that new stuff. David, would you like to go? David Harris? Two David H's.
Right. Yes, we live east side of Santa Rosa, and we own a 2017 Bolt that has the battery upgrade, and we're leasing a 2020 lease, so we're down to 6 months to that lease being up. So I would like to not be in the market for another car, but we have a 17-year-old, so we'll see how we end up. I was trying to, though, point at this camera at the portable two-way heat pump that I've got next to me, and thinking about that because of comments about the fact that not all of the cars are going to two-way heat pumps, and I'm a bit puzzled by that. So I would like to get a better understanding of why it's not a no-brainer for all of these EVs to have two-way heat pumps.
Yeah, good question. Brad, would you like to go?
Yeah, sure. I'm Brad. I drive a 2004 Honda Civic Hybrid, which I've owned since 2007. Got about 181,000 miles on it. I hope to eventually replace it with an EV. I live in Santa Rosa, and since I got a new job 4 or so months ago, I've been driving a lot. I mean, it's not that I've been driving a lot because I only live 2 miles each way from my work, but I've been driving a lot more than I used to. I used to basically bike to work. So that changed a little bit.
Bernie, before I forget, would you like to go?
Yeah, okay. Well, we went all electric some years ago now. Got rid of our gas furnace and our gas water heater, and we've got electric on the roof and 2 electric cars, and we just kind of smile about these gas prices. It's kind of humorous, but I know that like Tesla's booked months out for most of their cars, so people couldn't get a Tesla very quickly anyway, I guess. At any rate, nothing much else has changed, and we're just enjoying life.
Thanks. Caleb?
Everybody. So I have a 2015 BMW i3 that I've had for 6 years or more. So I've actually been using that quite a lot. So we have our kids in school quite a ways away. So I've been driving that on the highway quite a bit. And we do have a gas car as well. And to Bernie's point about availability, the slides that are coming up later talk about availability, and you're right on. Tesla's sold out all their new cars, but there are some used ones available. So
Tor?
Hey, I'm Tor in Sebastopol, and let's see, we're doing a 1-car family thing with a 2020 Bolt. Excuse me. Otherwise, as Zeno mentioned, we try to bike around town. And let's see, I will share that, like, our neighbor they have some teenagers wanting a car. And I think one of the guys said, I was encouraging them to get an electric so they could get the EV rate on our house, So there's another pitch for those teenage drivers to get a used electric, because if you're not already on a preferable electric rate, it opens it up for you. And then just a question for anybody my daughter's trying to get replaced tires on a 2013 Tesla. And if there's maybe in the chat, any feedback on a non-Tesla tire place in our area, just share what you know. Thanks.
And Woody?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, sorry, no camera today. Woody Hastings. I live in just outside of Sebastopol. We still drive a 2013 Chevy Bolt with a V as in Victor.
And I am Sonia Carey, and I drive a 2019 Model 3. And a couple weeks ago, I got a warning light that the seat belt was erroring out somehow on the passenger side. And Tesla came over 2 days ago, and I think it was that little plastic bracket that holds the seat belt. It was something simple, but it was holding it incorrectly, and it got fixed. So that was pretty simple. We also had some minor maintenance on the Volt, I think, but things are good. And I've had this fear of getting into a minor fender bender because of the constraint on parts. So I feel for you, Cecilia, but I'm glad you have something electric to drive in the meantime. I'm going to reshare real quick. Hopefully that worked out okay, that everyone gets to kind of see people a little bit better while we do intros. So let's see.
And by the way, everybody who's on a computer, you have multiple screens, whatever else, you can see everybody because there's always 2 windows. I don't know if there is on an iPad, something like on a tablet, but on a computer, there's 2 windows. And one window shows everybody either in gallery view or whatever view you've selected, and the other one shows the presenter or the presentation. And when you have a share, presenter disappears unless Sonia turns that other feature on, which we don't have on today. But the speaker will always show up in the recordings, I think.
Yeah, so feel free to ask any questions in chat, and maybe Cecilia and Jerry can help you out too. So general stuff. We continue to kind of think through the idea of fielding some active members around NBEAA press. We know that there's some opportunity around media. I think we've been kind of working on some admin stuff in the first couple months here of this spring season. So hopefully we can kind of return to that. We have our NBEAA club emails, and you know, I don't get negative feedback when I send those out, so I'm hoping it works out well. We send very minimal amount of club emails out. It might be helpful to mention that we also have the NBEAA team emails, and folks can always send ideas and information, speaker ideas, etc., to NBEAA team, and we will field them. There's 5 or 6 of us that are on that NBEAA team list, and we put together the presentation. And Bruce, glad to have you back, because our NBEAA membership balance was the one little thing I was wondering if you might want to kind of track down for us out of the EVA. I think we've probably got a nice balance there, and we might just kind of like take a tiny bit of time to figure out how to properly get some of the media equipment that we're looking for reimbursed, that sort of thing. And Jerry?
Yeah, one of the ideas we had is the work that primarily Cecilia's been doing was that we can make some of the emails simpler. NBEAA-team@googlegroups.com is a bit more complicated than things that we're often used to. And I mentioned it in one email to the team that maybe we make news at nbea.org, how we get news as opposed to sending it off to NBEAA team. And it occurred to me while you're just saying this, that we probably can do that for a lot of the other directions.
A lot of the others, yeah.
Discuss at nbea.org and blah, 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 once we have the mail forwarding working.
Great, yeah. Vanity email addresses, that'll be our next thing to work on. So we do have an update on kind of gathering news items. You know, in addition to the folks that are kind of directly participating in putting together the news items, if anyone has something that they would like to share, we'd love to hear from you about it. But we just realized that sending out a little prompt and asking you to reply to that prompt makes it a little hard for us to understand that you've kind of contacted us. So feel free to start a fresh email to us at any time in the month. Just go ahead and send it to NBEAA team. And right now it's the team that puts together the presentation deck. And so hopefully that'll be easy to remember, but like Jerry says, we'll improve upon that. So we have our link to our previous May meeting on YouTube and our presentation with links available. And, you know, I might update this slide in the future. Basically, everything is well coordinated and organized on www.nbeaa.org. So feel free to go there to get your updates. So we're looking for a speaker in July. I feel a little remiss. I've reached out to 2 or 3 people in the community. Haven't gotten, you know, people as excited about doing Zooms in 2022 as they were in 2020 and 2021. But we will continue to look for people. And in the meantime, I think, you know, we've got some pretty interesting news, and creates a good presentation.
And I would like to do another catch up on batteries. Well, though I'm not sure when I'm going to have time to do it. There's just so much. It's for me, it's amazing. You know, batteries were pretty much ignored for 80 years. And then in the late 70s, they started ramping up. And today, if you look at what people are doing, it's really interesting stuff. They're not just looking at chemistry anymore. They're looking at packaging, and they're looking at all kinds of different technologies fitting with electric storage. Let's put it in that term. Leaving something in, and easily, even though batteries aren't electric storage, but easily convertible with very low losses. So
would you like to do that for July, Jerry? Talk about battery?
I don't know. I'm still working on the ADU on top of the garage, and at the end of the month, I'm leaving for Alaska. And in fact, I come back from Alaska the day before our next meeting. So maybe later in the year.
Maybe September at that rate. Sounds like
Yeah.
you'll be here for July and August, but maybe not ready to present. Okay, good to know. We'll see if there's something else that we can put together for July or August. And I think, even though we've kind of made this a very information-packed kind of meeting, we could do something slightly different. So, we might have, an entertainment-oriented or, film-based meeting at some point. So we'll see if we can put together some videos or something like that.
And in our in-person meetings, we had a number of meetings where, and Andy's not here, Alan hasn't been joining, where people talked about what they've done with their homes, with buildings, and I followed up on a lot of those things and now done them both on my house and on the ADU. And I've been pretty careful about taking pictures, as I did the ADU, of technology for improving envelopes and improving buildings. And we're net zero now, by the way. So, and Bernie, I don't have as much solar panels as you. I only have 4 or 5 kilowatts, and we're at net zero, including the driving.
Well, yeah, we're net zero for the house, but when you add the cars in, and if we drive a lot, which we usually don't do, but if we do drive, then we fall behind.
Yeah, well, I'm not net zero on the airplane. So.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, right. You've got to count that.
We all have to count our flying miles, right?
Yeah, well, mine was in my airplane, so.
Yeah. All right. So more on that soon. So this is our full list of things. Our web team, I will mention, is a slightly different group of people dedicated to resolving all of our web issues. Cecilia is definitely our lead. We lean on her quite a bit. And so, if anybody has any questions or concerns or opportunities around, web or wants to get more involved too, some of the web stuff is really simple to configure now. And is really kind of down to content. And I've been wanting to get on there and work on the resources pages, and it's kind of fun. I haven't gotten in and done some editing yet, but we can manipulate the resources on, without a lot of engineering skill. So if you want to participate in that, feel free to let us know. That's NBEAA web. Hybrid update. I got to tell you guys, my mom just got COVID and she's not well, and it's been kind of sad. It's a little hard to, look at her and know that she's suffering a little bit, but I think she's turned the corner. She had one of her college student grandkids come visit who inadvertently brought COVID from the East Coast, and, with a lot of summer travel, this is happening. So I don't know how fast we want to get together directly, but I think, we've been, if folks want me to ask all the healthcare people in my world for advice on this, I'd be happy to, kind of bring back some ideas. John hasn't been joining us. And I think the other part that I've been mentioning is that, John and Brian at Thunderstruck would have to kind of participate in deciding how we would potentially start to meet. So feel free to contact me directly about it. I'm real excited to get together, but this has been working out okay as well.
Yeah, a number of other meetings people have gone off of Zoom, or including, but recently the MTC, for instance, was having in person, and then they just canceled it.
Yeah.
Excuse me, at the county level, I looked at the numbers this morning. So this says looking for 4 per 100,000. We're at 54 right now.
Well, I
The
was
numbers
thinking
going
that
up.
that number could have changed to a different number given how things are being measured right now, but whatever that number is, it's probably not 54. Yeah.
It's 54 like for unvaccinated, and it's like 30 something for general population. Last night when I checked this morning.
Yeah, if you break it out. Yeah. Well, we'll have more on that soon. So hybrid meeting prep. This is related. We're really interested in getting back into a room, and to do that and also support our online capabilities, we'll have to do some work on this. And hearing Jerry's summer schedule, I'm wondering if we can see if we can put a realistic timeline on this for the fall, and see if some things can kind of happen around September. So these might be the project manager in me is coming out. These might be conflicting priorities, getting your battery presentation ready and hybrid meetings ready. So we might pick and choose based on what we think.
Well, Gino and I have been talking about this, and we've attended the sessions that Zoom has provided, talking about equipment. A lot of the equipment's even more expensive than what we have here. Cecilia just pointed out recently security issues with OWL, but there's others. None of the hybrid meetings that I've seen or that I've attended. I actually took public transit for my MTC meeting last month to be the only person on site for the hybrid meeting. It still doesn't have the characteristics I was looking for. So I'd like to talk to more people and have a discussion of what people want to see out of it, because I wanted so that my thought of a hybrid meeting is if you're offsite, you feel like you're in the room. And if you're in the room, you feel like the people who are offsite are in the room as well. And I haven't seen any hybrid meetings that have that real feeling to it.
Yeah. So sounds like we're in the research phase and not the procurement phase for sure. And yeah, I appreciate your thoughtfulness on this, because I think, it's kind of like sometimes you just kind of dive in and try to create something, but if it's not going to really work for anyone, it may not be, particularly the right pursuit.
Yeah, and even ahead of times, I mean, the camera I'm using right here and the projector sitting down below here are two things that I bought well before we started talking about hybrids, thinking that we probably ultimately want to have hybrid meetings. And so I realized we need to have at least 2 screens running. So I'm putting those things together.
Yeah.
So can I make a comment here? This is Mark.
Sure.
Our church in the last year has been streaming, the Sunday services, and they're certainly different than, and I'm not sure what you're looking for in a hybrid, because the main thing that we find is that the people that are watching can't talk. They can chat. And so if I'm running the streaming equipment, then I would read the chat comment. But maybe you're looking for more than that. So but there are a lot of people around there doing streaming, live streaming, but it's not like it's different than what Jerry's explaining there.
Yeah, and Mark, and so you understand what I was hoping to achieve. One of the things that drives me nuts is when we're in the room together at Thunderstruck, somebody feels like piping in, they pipe in until somebody says, would you shut down for a while, let somebody else speak. And the discipline that we've come up with Zoom is grammar school and high school. Raise your hand and then get called on. And I'd like to go back to where it's more fluid, because the discussions end up being broken up, because you raise your hand and about 5 people down, you're now able to contribute to the comment the person 5 people before said. And it's not as much fun, because I like to interrupt everybody.
Yeah,
So,
let me add one thing. I think people say, I want to feel in the room. I want to feel it. And I think there's a big part of that feeling is having a moderator who pulls everybody together.
Mhm.
And who is aware of the people, and so there's a screen where everybody is visible to the people in the room, but you have to pull people in, and you have to kind of keep people turns and remember names, and so it's that feeling of being together is partly due to having skilled facilitators and people that make you feel welcome and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and moving between the on-site people and the online people. So yeah, I appreciate that. And it is a little hard to take it all in and make sure all the little pieces are working at the right times. Great. So our chapter goals update, this is something new in 2022. I kind of threw out that we had a few goals just to keep everyone organized each month and thinking about like, oh, if I had 2 hours this month, what would I do? So we did launch the new website, and Cecilia, if you don't mind, I was going to mention that you've set up Google Analytics. So we actually know how many people are looking at the pages on our site. And that kind of tells you whether or not you're putting your energy in the right places and so forth. We also got 2 inquiries and some spam inquiries, which are part and parcel to some extent, I guess. But we got 2 meaningful inquiries through the launch of our site, which were unsolicited. One was from the Holly High Performance person who's responsible for putting that project together, and the other was an individual who wanted to know about owners of Hyundais, because she has never seen one in real life and really wants to. So Mark, maybe if we could kind of coordinate offline and you're open, there's an individual in Sonoma County who reached out to us, and she wanted to see an Ioniq 5 or a maybe even a Kona. So she was kind of Hyundai oriented. And when she had a conversation with the dealer said, well, maybe there's a local club that would get you in front of one of these cars, because they're like, we don't have one. So I think that's really positive on our first goal. The other one we just talked about, which was the hybrid meetings. And then the third and fourth were really just around trying to keep an eye on opportunities for events. So again, related to getting out in the world. Any updates and any comments on these?
Yeah, so I have a bit of experience with pulling people to your website. I work for Slow Food, which is a local Russian River local chapter of an international organization. So we have a website, but we also have like a newsletter, and we have a social media. And so you have to kind of look at these 3 things as working together. So you put like a link in your newsletter that brings people to the website. And maybe you have a blog post or some new interesting thing. And then when they're there, they may explore the website a little bit. Right? Or you have social media and you pull in people that are not members necessarily, but want to follow what is new in like electric vehicles in the county, and you put links to your website, an article on your website, or things like that. So it's that these 3 things working together that can really pull in traffic to a website.
Thanks for bringing that up, Zeno. I last year, I participated quickly in a meeting around using the national chapter or the national organization's MailChimp account. And it wasn't quite what I thought. You can't really like kind of run your own MailChimp project through their account, but we could start thinking about more HTML formatted emails. We could start thinking about just very simple information provided through some of our standard emails that we write, so that we're kind of linking back to our site and so forth. So I'd love to do a bit of that, and maybe we can brainstorm that offline. Tor?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that, for each of these meetings, you pull together a lot of great information that gets mostly just shared with this group here, and maybe a few others that follow up. But it could well, I don't say the word easily, but it could be turned into a little newsletter, monthly newsletter. You have done all the research, and then people can sign up online to get to our monthly newsletter. And there's several different newsletter formats that work pretty well, where you have a little headline, paragraph, read more, headline, paragraph, read more. But honestly, we've compiled so much great information that a lot of people that aren't going to tune into this meeting live would love to get little tidbits and sign up and get updates and things like that. So I just think that the ultimate goal is not to get people to come to your website. You ask them, what do you want them to do? Or what are we offering them? And if if we find this information interesting and relevant, then that's a way to share it to a broader audience. Beyond that, I think it's starting to think about, who are we serving as far as newbies and things like that, and what kind of common questions, and just package a little bit of information for those folks. As far as prepping for events, I would also add suggesting create your own event, and don't be tied to any of these Apple Blossom, Earth Day. I mean, sure, be part of that, but we've gone whole years without a presence out there, and so it'd be interesting just to create a new event, just like a rally. I don't know, something. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
I like that idea. So in terms of our own event, that's something, I'll look in the next months to see if people have an interest on, but also your previous comment, Tor, gets me thinking just a little bit about how people may not come back and watch a 2-hour Zoom. There's nothing worse than being on a 2-hour Zoom than having to watch a 2-hour Zoom, possibly, in retrospect. But there's some pieces out of each of these that could go into an email to our 150. And so, maybe part of what you're saying is that if we could just get to the point of 14 people on this call getting to the 150 that we currently have, and possibly adding people to that list as well. Brad?
Yeah, I shared this with the NBEAA team email list, but the Wednesday night market has started up in Santa Rosa. I am available, but I get off work at 5, so I would not be available to set it up. I mean, that's an example of an event that happens every week. There's, I don't know, thousands of people there. It's not particularly environmentally themed. I mean, I wouldn't say it is at all, actually. But for me, that actually makes it more of an opportunity, because there's more people who wouldn't, normally think of electric vehicles and maybe have more questions or things like that. I remember Jerry commenting about how in the past you'd done tabling at events like that and been overwhelmed with the amount of questions. And for at least my view of the club, that's almost as important as the monthly meetings that we hold kind of as a standard, just because so much of adoption of more EVs is about outreach. And the dealers aren't doing that. There's not a used car dealership that specializes in EVs that I know of in the North Bay. So there's not really a business that will do that. So I thought the club should go in that direction. And I'd totally be willing to help.
Yeah, when you brought that up, Brad, I personally can't get there early either. So I was kind of waiting to see if there might be enough energy for it, but we've done it before. We have, a canopy, and we have some flags, and we have some things to say, and now we have a website. And I think the last time we talked about maybe just doing a quick pop-up or something like that, we said, gee, we're not sure what to tell people because our website's not ready. But now that we have our website, we can kind of, show up at a place and not even necessarily have a lot of paper on a table, but we can, direct people to our site, that sort of thing. It would be interesting to
It would be
brainstorm.
good to have paper on the table and things to show people. You know, we probably can't bring a car, but I'd be willing to take some days too. This sounds very much, Brad, like what the master gardeners do. And they'll show up at farmers markets. And it takes coordination to do that though, and materials.
Yeah. Yeah. People do expect paper, huh? Tor?
Yeah, I was just thinking that the Wednesday night market, I mean, if you contacted the organizers and just got a few parking spots, I'm sure they'd make room. It's just getting a few folks to like commit to go there every week. The same night it is here in Sebastopol in the Barlow. There's a lot of music, a lot of people. In theory, it could be, you know, something, a presence there. And one thing that Sebastopol's hosting a little event next weekend in Ives Park and some tabling going on. And I'm going to have a bike Sebastopol table there. But my mode there is really to listen to people. And every time I see another electric car driver, I want to ask them, like, do you charge at home? You know, I want to ask them a few questions about their experience. And I think we're in a position potentially to ask people about their experiences, because particularly the charging will help inform building out more fast chargers or other kinds of chargers, because there's a lot of electric cars on the road, and I just have all these questions for those folks that are driving that aren't at this meeting, and to help inform building more electric infrastructure. So that might be it, not only giving them information, but also collecting information if you're at.
I like that a lot, Tor. We could design a booth that has the EV driver and wannabe EV driver sides to it. And one has a little chart on it where you have the marking pen, you get to mark your answers with a check mark. And so you get participation. We'd have people who show up who were EV drivers as well.
Yeah.
Who were answering questions, and then somebody else is walking up who wants to be an EV driver. We talk to them instead of one of us, and that works great.
Yeah, we'll be matchmakers. Here, talk to these people. Anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, I don't know if we have next steps on that. I know that we kind of keep touching down on it without, actually kind of saying, hey, I'll take this on. I'll show, I'll put a table in the back of my car and come get the canopy from Sonia and set it up. But if anyone wants the canopy, it's sitting in my barn, and there's some outdated literature next to it too. But, short of that, I think we're kind of in the getting ready to commit to something phase. Unless someone's just going to really take the bull by the horns and show up. Both Brad and I said, wow, great idea, but neither of us are going to be there at the beginning of that. So, we definitely need to partner with someone who doesn't have a job.
Well, we created a group, NBEAA-press, and the specific reason for that one was to do exactly what Brad's talking about for
outreach
and for this. It would be great to have somebody to lead the group, and then, like we did with Web, and we started with the one leader, and I have to admit we have a different leader now. Then steer the narrative, figure out what it's going to look like, and then look for the volunteers to show up on the Wednesdays. And so there's really two different activities involved in here.
Yeah. Well, and every Wednesday is a lot bigger than one event. So Tor's talking about, there's one event next weekend, for instance, and there might be other future events or a created one that we create. And that's a little less than an every Wednesday commitment. So, trying to pick between those as well. Okay, on to more events here. So I had mentioned earlier that we're doing a little bit of a different program contribution where we're directly looking at the different categories with different people. Cecilia, I'm not sure if you meant to put me in for humor, but I had my name down here, and I thought that was a mistake because it was Cecilia's for humor. But every section here has a person except for legislation and policy. And if someone wants to take that on and contribute some legislation and policy news each month, that would be great. Woody, it's your core competency, but I won't volunteer you. But if you know that legislation and policy is not covered well, that might also be an opportunity for you to say, oh, this is something you guys might want to report on, and just send an email quickly to NBEAA team, and one of us will field that.
By the way, I just want to point out that in having my name, for instance, next to that, it doesn't mean that I'm necessarily looking for the articles, but one of the things that I do is I look at the postings of the articles people have brought in and comments that they've brought in. And then I look and see if I can make a slide out of the material that they had. So even whoever did do legislation would be looking, once a month and early on, putting the deck together and say, is there anything here which is legislation, in which case I'll do a little research in it, make a slide on it, and I'll send it off to Sonia.
Great. And I won't bore everyone with the details, but our little working team will work out some of those extra steps to see, who wants to do what around that as well. I have a link here for the tips and the sources. That was kind of an earlier project of just trying to identify all the different news sites that we can pull from. So that's there if you want to look at it during the month. The resources page on nbeaa.org should probably do about the same for you. So we do have an event in July coming up, the Holly High Voltage Experience event. And I had a conversation with a fellow named Blaine, who is responsible for putting together the event and getting groups to participate. And it was very interesting to hear why Holly, a carburetor company from Bowling Green, Kentucky, has gotten into doing high voltage experience events in Sonoma County and elsewhere. And the simple short answer is that Holly did not anticipate fuel injection well, and it hurt their business significantly. And in not anticipating fuel injection well, they don't want to repeat history and not anticipate the advent of electric vehicles well. So I'm looking at you, John. I just thought this was fascinating that this fellow Blaine, was telling me this, and that this prompted them to want to get involved. Now, what's interesting is that if you look at Holly's parts available for a car, I was like, I wanted to hear him say, and therefore we're helping like build heat pumps or build parts that you would put into an EV. I don't know that they have any parts that are necessarily part of an EV. Does anyone else? I don't think so. But anyway, they may have, kind of an events business that is also a profit center. So this is their events business. And we've been invited to get involved for July 9 or 10. He said, if you guys wanted to do your meeting, we have a media room at Sonoma Raceway. We can set you up so that, you could have your meeting at Sonoma Raceway, or you could conduct a workshop there, or you could have a lunch or something. So my question for you is, this is short order, and I don't know that it's a natural fit for us. So I'll leave that out there. Does anyone have an interest in doing something unique and special for July related to the Holly High Voltage Experience at the Sonoma Raceway?
And John, you have experience with that already, huh?
Yeah, hopefully I'm unmuted. The Thunderstruck went last year. We were kind of unprepared for it, so it was a little bit crazy. We hope to be a little more prepared, maybe have a booth. Thunderstruck is, for those that don't know, is where we used to meet, and we have a number of vehicles. One that is specifically a race vehicle that is pretty funky. It's an old Formula thing, but we've participated by running in the events last year. I suspect it would be great for the this organization to be there. There's so many, they had really good attendance, and they have a lot of manufacturers in the EV industry too. And that's one thing, Sonia, I wondered if they're partly just wanting to get themselves exposed to manufacturers in the EV industry so that they can know how to, how their future will fit in. Because, there's considerable new work going in where, companies are putting millions into designing specific things for parts for EVs, some of which can be used for the high performance do-it-yourselfer too. So it was, I thought it was a really good event. I wasn't super thrilled with what we did because we weren't prepared, but and it does cost money to have a booth. I don't know what they do for organizations though.
Yeah, I think, what we're talking about here is that, he was hoping to get some energy around it and probably, help facilitate us being there. And so, I can check back with him, but, certainly he's kind of leaving it open. I was very candid about, how many participants we usually have in our monthly meetings and how large our email list is. I think one way that we could participate that's pretty simple is that we could send an email to NBEAA Club and let people know. I agree that this might be a good way for individuals who are in the market for an EV right now to see some of the cars. They're, a little bit hard to find right now. And I think that they're hoping for some participation from various manufacturers. I mentioned Hyundai in particular, and he didn't have a commitment from Hyundai yet, but he wanted to use my story. So, part of this is just all of us trying to generate energy, which is all in the good direction.
Yeah, my picture is if we did want to participate and we had 6 different models or something like that we could bring and just demo. That would be a cool thing for people to see.
Yeah. Mike?
Okay, I think Zeno has hand first, but anyways, I just went to their website and they have a little section that says attending clubs. And of course, they're all Tesla clubs. So yeah, it would be great if we had our club or could get our club listed on their site. I think my calendar's open that weekend, so I'd go.
Okay, great. Zeno? Oh, you're on mute.
July 9 is our next meeting date, right?
That's right.
So I wonder whether this is like an alternative meeting that we could have there, like a tour type meeting. So it would be kind of not a hybrid meeting, but it would be we could meet there and maybe have a table, but mostly it would be to have a meeting of the club there that involves going around and talking to people and having a tour of this and that. I don't really know what this event is, but could we just have a meeting there rather than having a meeting on Zoom? Because it would be hard to do both on that Saturday. And I looked at my calendar. I have some conflict on Sunday, so but I want to throw that out as like an unusual kind of alternative session in July that would actually meet there.
Yeah, I would agree. And I see Mike gave us a thumbs up as well. Jerry?
Yeah, you and I attended that event last year. It's the first time I've been to the Raceway. And so walking around, it's noisy. And even with EVs, because the screeching of tires. So there's a lot of racing going on and whatever else. And it was interesting going. But it's not a place where you're necessarily going to walk up and find people unless you have a booth. And if we had a club meeting, I don't know how that would work. But it might be interesting having the meeting there. I'm not sure how we would do it.
Well, I'd like to suggest something. this is an event with a lot going on. And I think what Zena was saying is the tour meeting would be more like, let's all meet at a location, probably a table that we have. And then also let's tour together, some of the cars that they have available, et cetera. When Jerry and I were there was a significant number of cars set up that were kind of curious and interesting, like an electric DeLorean and, a completely restored older VW bus that was all electric, that was done. It was probably like, over $100,000 put into this little
It
car.
is, because I looked into it and they're right out of Petaluma, and they'll make one for you. And I think it's $200,000.
$200,000. Okay. Yeah, it was quite beautiful. And so there's some really interesting little cars. In addition to that, I fully expect us to be able to see one or two newer cars that we haven't seen before. I don't know that we'll see a Rivian, but we might see like a Ford F-150 Lightning or something like that. And then there's plenty of, Tesla Model 3s and so forth there. But, maybe the newest Model Y, if you're curious, you can get some hands-on views of things that are slightly different from what you've seen before. As a tour meeting, it wouldn't necessarily mean that we would go through a slide deck. I don't think that a slide deck and a recorded presentation is necessary every month. We'd be doing hands-on immersion instead. The thing I need to figure out though is that Jerry and I paid $25 each to enter, and parked in their upper parking lot and took their little bus the quarter-mile down the hill.
And a lot more for lunch.
And we paid a lot and waited an hour for lunch. And so I could check with Blaine to see if part of this is like, if you guys host us, will you give us 20 tickets and a table for free? Like I could start with that and report in next week. Shall we kind of go that way? Great. Zeno, did you have a question? Or?
No, I'm sorry. I should have taken off my hat.
Yeah. So when we're getting a thumbs up from Mike and Tor?
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like an interesting place to go check things out. But if you want an easy meeting place, the Sonoma Clean Powers Advanced Energy Center, they keep telling me, like, if you need any meetings, we'll host it. It's free. So look at it, the high voltage thing at Sonoma Raceway, as a place to go check out some cars. I mean, I don't know what you're going to share there, but it's more of an event to go experience. And I guess to have a meeting there if you pull it off. But anyway, there's other meeting places locally that if you as an alternative to Thunderstruck, but if that's what this is. So
yeah, it's a good point, Tor. I think that if our purpose there would be to just let people in the area know that we exist in case they would like to participate in our club, that might be enough reason to go. That would be, increased club membership would be our goal in that situation. It's an outdoor event. And so I don't know that we really want to meet indoors. I don't know that we really want to use their media rooms and things like that and all hang out together inside a room, because that's kind of not our point anyway. So getting to like the Sonoma Clean Power Event Center and using it would be an indoor experience that we kind of measure that way, I would think.
Yeah, I'm not ready for that myself. But and as far as getting more people to the club, I mean, you'd probably be better off figuring out showing up Wednesday nights in Santa Rosa than this event per se. But if you get a couple of people that rally and go represent, then go for it. Right? That's what it comes down to. Who's going to show up?
Yeah.
The one difference is that the pull of people would be more than just the Santa Rosa surrounding area. We have our own market here. So you're really talking about Santa Rosa residents at the square.
Yeah.
We get a lot more. We get into the other valley, in Sonoma Valley.
Yeah. Yeah. John, did you have another comment?
Yeah, I kind of agreed. I think Tor may have been saying this, that it is a thing to experience. And somehow I realized, hearing what he said, if having a meeting might be kind of anticlimactic, it's just go meet when everybody's just going, wow, look at all these cars and we're meeting. It's kind of maybe not. And personally, I'm going to be involved with Thunderstruck that day anyway, but that's just my own perspective.
Yeah.
Could we just not have our meeting? Last year, what happened was we had a very short meeting so that we could actually go and watch John race. Unfortunately, we missed John racing. So we had a 1 hour meeting, and then Sonia and I hauled our asses over to the racetrack after that. But maybe we have our meeting there, but we have an outdoor get together meeting. Maybe our banners there and the tables there. A lot of stuff wasn't personed. We could put something really simple. If people are interested, then they can sign up with the club. But then the rest of us could be there and kind of goggle at different vehicles. If people are interested in driving over there. Caleb, it's kind of a long drive for you, and YouTubers.
Yeah, can I say a thing? So we could add this event to our the calendar that's on our website. That's one way to like share it with folks. I'm also wondering if there are any kind of like restrictions on like recording video there. This could be something that we could, make a video about that could maybe get a little bit more like attention on our YouTube channel. And also if we're not having like an actual meeting, this could be like, like something like a thing that's in place of our regular meeting video content.
Yeah, I like both those ideas. I'll ask Blaine if there's any restriction on video. And I think that like if we just treat it as a casual meetup where we string together a little bit of video to show people what the event is like, that might be helpful. And full disclosure, I think that you'll end away coming back with some mixed feelings because there's a lot of orientation around performance and drifting, and that is not quite the same as let's transition to electric for ecological purposes and climate change purposes. But I do think that I found the crowd kind of inspiring. The crowd is oriented to EVs. It's a Bay Area crowd, it's multicultural, and everybody's kind of oriented in the same way. So there's some inspiration there as well. So this is going to have to happen in a little bit of short order. So I'll have that conversation and report to the team, and then we'll probably write a club email so that people know what we're doing. Yeah. Okay, great. We're doing great without a presentation today. We're having plenty to talk about. I'll try to move us on pretty quickly here from this point forward. I'm in presentation mode. I made a couple notes to myself of who talks to what, but please volunteer yourselves. I thought this was a Caleb slide, but is it a Jerry slide?
No, this was mine.
Okay, Caleb.
So this is basically the top 10 selling EVs of Q1, and this is for North America only. But as was mentioned earlier, you can see Tesla tops the charts, but you can't get one for the year. So if you want a new Model Y, 3, X, or S, you either buy a performance version, which you can get a little bit earlier, unless you want kind of their standard long range, and then you're looking at next year, essentially. Cars that have inventory on the lot, not necessarily that they're all available, but you should be able to get your hands on some of these. The Ford Mach-E has been really popular. I see them all the time down here. The Ioniq 5, there's actually some inventory on lots. They seem to be getting those over to dealers and in areas where people can actually drive them, at least in this area. But I also see a lot of those on the road as well. I am located very close to the Hyundai headquarters, which happens to be down here in Orange County. And so, I see a lot of cars from that as well. The EV6, again, is another one that's available. I think the one thing that I'm seeing, and I didn't have time to put a lot of this kind of background information in, but finding a dealer that is selling at MSRP is somewhat challenging. I know we've talked about that in the past. There is a resource, and I forgot to link it here, but I'll try to throw it out there either in the chat or in an email later. There's a forum where people basically post where they've been able to get cars for MSRP, and you might have to travel a bit for them, but there are some out there that if they're available, they'll accommodate a reasonable sale price. So you can kind of see that, you know, the mix of all the vehicles that are available today, and this is only the top 10. Obviously, there's lots of other vehicles that are on dealer lots that you can get a hold of, and this doesn't account for any of the used market, because there are, you know, a fair number of used vehicles that are out and available, but again, it's those prices are really high. So if you're looking for a good deal, you have to work a lot harder for it. And then I think
Caleb,
the next one is,
I had heard that if you add a hitch to your Model Y, it'll bump up the delivery date to be sooner.
Interesting.
So like if you add an accessory that's less than like performance, but I don't know if that's true anymore.
Yeah. And then because trucks are such a hot topic, I decided to put a kind of a truck highlight here. The image of the Cybertruck is admittedly a CGI, but so is the product. So basically the big movers right now are the R1T Rivian and the Ford F-150 Lightning. So I've seen both on the roads here, and I actually saw a Hummer EV yesterday. And those are going out in much smaller numbers, but they are kind of out and available. The Chevy Silverado EV is due out next year, so I anticipate we'll see some more news about that probably in the September timeframe, maybe a little bit earlier, something over the summer, because that's going to be coming out as a 2023 model year. And they're building it on a standard platform now, so that should be something that they have more detailed announcement on within, I'd say, the next 6 months. But yeah, that's kind of the truck atmosphere in terms of consumer vehicles. Obviously, there's definitely some other things out there, but the prices again are all variable. The F-150 Lightning, there's dealers out there that are charging like $40,000 plus over MSRP for some of these. And it's gotten to the point where Ford has basically said no more, and they're talking about doing a direct to consumer sales and delivery model. And at the moment, I think they're going to run into some red tape around dealer influence, because even though Ford has separated their kind of legacy vehicles and their EV developments into two separate organizations, they're still under Ford Motor Company. And so they're not technically a separate company at this point. They would have to create that complete separate division in order to operate like Rivian and Tesla has with their direct to consumer model. But they are putting some pressure onto their dealers to stop the markups to allow general public to access these vehicles. So it should be interesting. One unique note I would add is that I say a lot, there's not a lot of Rivians, and there's certainly not a lot of Hummers out, but I see a lot of them on the secondary market, and they're selling for extreme numbers. The Hummer EV I've seen sell for over $220,000 on bidding sites and auction sites for as a new vehicle. And Rivian is similar. I mean, they've been selling for over $130,000. So it's pretty interesting.
Ready for the next one?
Oh yeah. This was kind of I pulled this directly from cars.com, and it's a little bit dated now, but you can kind of see the vehicles that are in inventory, either available or at least showing that there's potential for somebody to walk onto a lot and actually see one. So there are, there are a number of vehicles that, you could get into and try before you actually buy them, and have hope of actually getting one. Wow. Interestingly enough, EV6 is up there, but again, like we've heard, the the dealer markups have been pretty severe and you can't always find them. So, this might not be entirely true in terms of today's, several months later.
Yeah, I saw that number that you have here, days in inventory.
Yeah.
And the only thing I can tell is the inventory is this. It's hit the dock, it's on a truck, it was driven to the dealer, and the dealer's prepping it for the owner, and that stays in inventory, but it's
Right.
already sold.
Yeah. Yeah.
Base of inventory was inventory not owned by somebody or not paid for already. I think the numbers would be very, very different.
Yeah. 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 I'd say with especially with the Ioniq 5 and the EV6, I mean, you can see that they have a lot coming in, but like you said, they're prepping them for people who already have orders.
Yeah.
The interesting ones that I thought were somewhat more accessible on here. I mean, certainly Nissan has a lower number of inventory, but they stay on the market a lot longer, at 21 days. And I think the Chevy Bolt number is actually somewhat incorrect. And I think that that's largely due to vehicles being held in inventory because of some of the recall issues that they had. And so, yeah, they might be in inventory, but they're not going to sell them to you. Or if they do, they're not going to deliver them.
Even the prices here seem, like the EV6, I couldn't get a quote that low, but I have friends who traveled to New Mexico because there was an EV they wanted to get, and the price was cheaper in New Mexico. So I started looking at Colorado and New Mexico, and the EV6 price is the same every place. It'll be $60,000.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's kind of the interesting thing. It's like the dealers will list the MSRP on their websites, but almost none of them are actually selling them at that rate.
Yeah, there's a line underneath it. It has, here's the price. And right underneath it on all the sites, it says, but there may be a dealer markup.
Right. Yep. Exactly right. So almost always.
Yep. So I think I put this one together, and it's just a little deep dive on a couple of the previous metrics. So I accidentally put it in a good spot. Basically the Mach-E sales can be tracked using the goodcarbadcar.net numbers because it's its own unique EV model. So with a Kona, you can't track the unique EV models because they don't report them out separately from the ICE versions of a Kona. So with the Mach-E sales, I had an interest in seeing whether or not, we're going to see some increases that might be indicative of like the constraint going away a little bit. And so with the Mach-E sales, they did increase in May, but the EV6 sales were a little bit lower in May. But still there is throughput there, 2,632 EV6s going down to 2,088. And then of course, the difference between the number of Teslas that are being sold, even under those constrained situations, Tesla doesn't really report their numbers monthly, so you usually don't find them monthly, but in Q1, we're talking about over 100,000 Teslas sold across all their models. So when you compare that to the Mach-E and the EV6, it's still a little bit of a drip, but we're kind of hoping for greater throughput there. And I did notice that Daimler Trucks kind of announced that they're thinking that their computer chip constraint problems have gone away, and that was the first indicator that maybe these constraints were relaxing. I don't know if you have feedback on that, Caleb.
Yeah, I think that some of those restraints have been lessened over the last 6 months, and to where the factories are able to start putting more components through. I think that there are some more. It really depends on where you're sourcing your material from, because we certainly have the variability that is the China lockdowns that are causing some additional hiccups. But we'll see how that plays out, because a lot of the automotive chips are not necessarily coming from those locations. They come from Taiwan and so in some cases Japan and others. So I think there is some smoothing out of that supply chain, and the bottlenecks are starting to be really eliminated. But I think we do still have some rocky space to come.
Mm-hmm. So also, energy and climate news. Let's see, short-lived pollutants need to decrease to meet the Paris goals. Jerry, you put this one in and I kind of fielded it, I think.
I put the, okay, fine.
Yeah, so this was kind of something that I think that, there's been an awareness around over time that obviously that the methane levels are going to be contributing to global warming in coming decades in a way that's not being properly measured. And so, just looking at that and looking at the contribution of methane levels, this chart was the best thing I could come up with, which is, I guess you're looking at, for methane, it's 25 times more detrimental, possibly.
So this is interesting, and let me fill in the blanks here, because there's a number of things that weren't discussed in the earlier years and are now being discussed. Methane over a 100-year period is 25, 34 times more impactful than carbon dioxide as far as a greenhouse gas. That is, how much energy does it actually bounce back to the surface? But in a 10-year period, methane's 120 times. 2 years, it's even higher. You work the numbers back. The point of the article was something that somebody else had brought up earlier, and Andy Ferguson is one, and Ned's another, and Mike Turgeon and others who push on this and say we need to stop using methane. And the reason for it is if we stop using methane, even in some of our lifetimes, maybe not mine, maybe yours, you'll actually see a decrease in greenhouse gases because they'll degrade into carbon dioxide. And when they degrade into carbon dioxide, then their impact is only 1 as opposed to 34 or 100 and whatever. And so that gives us a lot of time to figure out how to start pulling the carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, because we can stop the rapid growth. If you burn the methane or any of these other stuff, hey, it becomes carbon dioxide, not a problem. It's the infrastructure that's the problem. And Tor's wife, Dina, has pointed this out with refrigerants as well. Refrigerants, in many cases, the ones that we have that are environmentally sound, are 4,000 times more impactful than carbon dioxide. And Caleb and I have experience with how often refrigerants leak out of cars. And Dina was worried about grocery stores. Worry about cars. You don't sell a vehicle today without air conditioning. And the connectors that they use in the vehicles are really atrocious. So that's the reason for the slide. And this is now being highlighted, because if we have an emergency and we need to do something in 10 years, the place to focus is the places for these gases.
So the hydrofluorocarbon 32 is the last item on this chart. And I appreciate your telling me this is like a 100-year number in that, but looking at the first 10 years out of the 100 years is sometimes a worse story, is what I'm taking away. I know that there's been a lot of transitions in the formulas, in the chemicals being used in different AC units. That's something that's getting looked at, right? Like kind of continuing to transition to less bad gases.
Yeah, well, there's actually one, the problem turns out to be this: when Dina started talking about this, I started doing research on it because I want to understand it better. And the problem is this, is as you start to decrease the impact, the chemicals by and large become more flammable. David's got his hand up because he probably knows more about this than I do. But they become, it's a balancing act between them. There actually is one that's out there today that is only 4 times more impactful than carbon dioxide. If you do it with carbon dioxide, you can actually do refrigerants with carbon dioxide, but they're high pressure, they're expensive, they have to have multiple cycles, and so that's an entirely different system. But it's an interesting topic area that's now getting a lot of discussion. David, can you fill more on that?
Yeah, well, you brought up carbon dioxide, and it's been about 5 years ago that I read that they expected the automobile industry to go to carbon dioxide as a refrigerant and it hasn't happened. So
it's a complicated system is what I looked into it.
I
And
think where it's most widely used is in Japan. Hot water heaters and things like that are using carbon dioxide. In fact, in the energy center, Sonoma Clean Power, one of those providers, it is a CO2 system that's there to see.
yeah, they're more expensive systems, and the other thing about them, I believe that the carbon dioxide systems actually are effectively efficient at much lower temperatures as well, like -10 degrees Fahrenheit. So, and you can buy them in commercial units now. I don't have that though. I have the cheaper one.
Well, it'd be great to do a whole presentation on heat pumps and the gases that go inside them.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, because Woody raised the question of what does this have to do with EVs? And okay, so we're not producing CO2, but the EVs are leaking refrigerant.
Yeah, and by the way, just in general for the club, when I joined the club, it was interesting because a lot of the meetings in the club, they're about EVs, but they're also about environment and building. I mean, the solar panels I have in the company I use as a result of a presentation by the club, in the club of this company and why do they do these things this way. So,
yeah. We tend to do a good job of covering technology products and engineering details. And so if it comes up, it is nice to try to not overlap other organizations in the same county. But, so this is a story that is kind of like circulated out of Bloomberg NEF and keeps having legs because it keeps popping up on my news feed, that it was announced by Bloomberg that 1.5 million barrels of oil per day are being displaced already because of electric vehicles, but it's mostly 2- and 3-wheelers, which are mostly centered in Asia, different countries in Asia. So 67% of the oil displacement that has occurred so far since 2015 is related to transitions, I assume, from gas-powered mopeds and motorcycles to electric vehicles that are mopeds and motorcycles. Buses displace 16% of oil and passenger vehicles 13%. So that would be 4-wheel vehicles, I would assume. And
I was just gonna say, I'd be really surprised in this last category of commercial vehicles,
mm-hmm.
if in the next 3 years, we don't see that really accelerate.
Take off.
Yeah, so many are now entering the market, so they have options. And
yeah.
They've all proven now that it's more cost effective to have an electric vehicle than a gas powered vehicle, especially with the prices going up. So they're going to respond very quickly to this.
Yeah. David, is that a new hand up? Possibly not. Okay.
I think having batteries, getting battery production up is going to be the issue for electric transportation.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to, if you get the 2022 number down here, and we're all saying we really anticipate great improvement in a couple of these areas, I would assume that we can displace more like a couple million barrels of oil per day pretty soon. I'm just kind of waiting for that to, take effect and have a little bit of an effect on what's going on.
And Bernie, to your point, one of the things that we discovered was there's just so many applications in commercial that need a 100-mile range. That's all they need is a 100-mile range. And they're in business and they realize they need a 100-mile range. So why would they buy a 300-mile range? Whereas auto buyers seem to think they need 300.
This is another way of looking at the same information. Gas demand in the shorter term is down 5% right now. If you follow 2022 is this little black line here. And, you know, it's meandering a little bit, maybe due to COVID rates. They did cut out 2020 and just throw it out because they thought it was an anomaly, I think. And then, you know, they're kind of comparing to 2021 and 2019. But there should be some sense of whether or not paying $5 gas across the US and $7 gas in California actually creates demand destruction, which is what, you know, they're talking about, is that people actually use their higher MPG cars more, drive fewer miles, use public transit. There's a lot of different ways that this number gets affected, I assume. Any comments on this?
I have one comment on, I have a role on the Policy Advisory Council for the MTC. And one of the task force I'm on is the one to toll the highways. And we all keep arguing, why are you thinking about doing that? Well, we're going to reduce the traffic by tolling the highways. And I think the whole thing with the prices of gas going up will be part of the proof, one way or the other, that people are not terribly price sensitive when they get in their cars, that ultimately they bounce right back in. I expect this black line to pop back up again, even if the prices stay here.
That big question about price sensitivity is probably the one that's, you know, being kind of considered around inflation in general. It seems like no one's price sensitive about anything.
Yeah.
And that's why we have inflation.
Yeah.
But yeah, it will be interesting.
People are buying houses in Silicon Valley, and one of the analyses that I did was our house in Silicon Valley was built in 1959. So I looked at the inflation rate in the US from 1959 to 2022, and the inflation rate is 1,000%. The inflation rate on the house, 16,000%.
Okay. Yeah. Land.
So, yeah, no price sensitivity.
Land. Yeah. Cecilia, we have our humor section.
You buy one, Cecilia?
No, I don't have this particular variation. But so these guys decided to prank their friend who had a Model 3, and they presented this modified version as if like, hey, we did this to your car. So what they did was they wanted to build a Model 3 that would be a little bit, have better off-road capabilities. So they added some like huge treads. I think they weigh like, you know, like 1.5 tons. And it took about 4 weeks in order to make this. They have a video like highlighting how they put it together and all that. It was originally, it's in German, but they have English subtitles. And they say that they're going to do like an actual off-road test. It's been 3 weeks since this video was released. Haven't seen that video yet, but yeah, this is something that people have done.
I have a question. How did they get in?
You know, that's a very good question. They might have to get in through the window.
Did they take the Model 3 of their friends, or did they take a different Model 3 and pretend it was their friends?
They actually got a different one. They wrapped it to make it look like it was the same car, but no, it's a different car.
Got it. Yeah, I think there was a different one where they put some really massive tires on a Model 3, but this is extreme.
I was actually at a car show last week, and there was a guy who brought his Model 3, and he had air suspension on it and Lambo doors, and he had done all sorts of stuff to it, wide body kit. And I took a picture of it, and it's pretty funny.
And it's all operational, it sounds like.
Yeah, he drove it there.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
All right. So with high gas prices, some people have been like wondering like what they could do to like, you know, lower their gas prices. And I've actually seen this in person in groups I've been in, where they're like, what would it cost to like, you know, ride a horse? So this group, News Nation, they actually ran the numbers. So with a national average about $5 a gallon US, you would spend over $7,000 in gas plus like insurance and things like that. If you were to get a horse, there's the price of purchasing a horse, taking care of it, feeding it, getting lessons, learn how to ride it, and that would be about $10,000 a year. So it is not cheaper to get a horse. And when I did the numbers myself, it also came to the same conclusion. They recommend that you should ride a bike or try public transportation as your option. But, and this is more maybe the funnier part, if you just actually drove the car in their picture, which is a Mustang Mach-E, you could save some money that way.
They used a Mustang Mach-E picture?
Yes.
Like by mistake?
I don't know if it was by mistake. This seems to be a thing. People with electric cars are like, gas prices, oh my goodness. And they show a picture of an electric car, whether because they have an electric car and that's what they use, or because they want to, like, you know, be funny. I don't know.
Got it. It's a TikTok thing then, maybe. But, you know, my sister used to work at an ad agency, and she was responsible for airbrushing out the like the little keyhole spots on Mazdas and things like that, because everything was supposed to be smooth and clean. And you can see that like electric cars are actually better looking than gas cars because they don't have big grills a lot of times. And so the eye might just be gravitating to the electric car. Jerry?
Yeah, well, I didn't need to do the analysis. In a previous life, I used to race horses. And I told my uncle once per year what I spent on horses and how much I lost. And he said, and he was in his 80s at the time, in a lifetime at the track, Gerald, I've never lost as much as you lose in a year. They cost more than this.
That's funny. All right. Have we moved on to the Jerry segment?
Yeah, this is the Jerry segment, I guess.
Okay.
I just put this up because I got this in email from EVgo. They're changing their charging structure. And the only part was I was wondering if this was part of their progression. I brought this up in an earlier meeting. The state of California over the next 10 years, and the next 2 years will be key, is requiring the change for charge stations that you have to pay by the kilowatt hour. They can't have 15 different charging methods. And so you're going to pay by the kilowatt hour. There may be a small connect charge, I think is allowed, and they can change the rate during the day because the rates on the electricity behind it change. So they're allowed to do those things. But by and large, they can't say, well, you get the first 2 hours for free, and then after that is $5 for every 5 minutes and blah, blah, blah. So this is happening first with the lower energy, then with higher energy, and then into commercial over time. But EVgo, I think, is jumping on it. And my experience thus far has been, for reliability, EVgo's had the most reliable quick charges that I've gone to. The others always are pretty spotty as far as reliability. And I submitted an article for next month on that topic as well.
So I can't recall for sure, but I think the Lucky's in Sebastopol has an EVgo, and if I lived in an apartment nearby and I wanted to use the EVgo like very regularly,
it's always available.
It's always available anyway. Yeah. But yeah. All right.
It's not cheap. I mean, still half the price of gasoline, but yeah, for their rates. And I keep doing I get articles now constantly as a pilot, and Bernie probably gets them too. And keep seeing, tracking what's happening with electric vehicles. This is actually what was interesting to me was they're doing the testing now out of Hollister. And this one is a fuel cell vehicle filled with hydrogen. And one of the reasons I found this interesting was that I've seen presentations by Shell. Shell's actually very serious about becoming an energy company and not an oil company. BP's doing the same thing. I'm not sure all of the oil companies are at that level yet. And so they've bought a number of companies here in California that install and run charge stations, real life stations, fueling depots. And they're doing this now, building H2 infrastructure as well. And this is through a contract with the DOE. In this case, they're actually using a portable hydrogen refueling station. So they bring the hydrogen in, they don't pipe it in. And these guys will be doing commercial flights, all electric. So this is mid-range.
So that the CEO for that company who started that, he's also the founder of Juicebox.
Ah, okay, all right. Related to that is this. I heard a lot of flack about planes and commercial aircraft account for about 6 to 8% of carbon that we pump out. United Airlines has been having lots of ads now that they're using as much biofuel as they can, so recyclable fuel. Here's actually a chart outlining what's going to happen. Aviation is using diesel and gasoline as the sources for aircraft. And what the analysis basically says, going forward, different kinds of aircraft will use different kinds of fuel sources, batteries. They'll be using fuel cells. Some will be burning hydrogen. But the one that was most interesting to me was this e-fuel. And this one is a direct replacement for diesel. And so they can pump it right into the aircraft. The problem with e-fuels is it's more expensive and limited supply so far. Why don't you go on to the next? And by the way, all the airlines have now started talking about being carbon neutral. So the hydrogen, a friend of mine's getting a, that didn't work with the underline, did it with the H2? That's not my problem, this PowerPoint. Anyway, a friend of mine is getting an EV, but his EV is hydrogen EV because he doesn't believe the batteries are sustainable and that we won't have batteries. And so he's getting hydrogen, lives in San Francisco. I've objected to hydrogen because the amount of energy you need in order to get the hydrogen is something like 4 times the amount of energy that the hydrogen actually provides to the vehicle. So it's a really low performance. It's actually lower performance in efficiency than gasoline as far as conversion of fuels. But that leads to high cost. But here was a projection of where the cost on hydrogen will go, that it is that it's going to drop down to something like 80 cents. I think this is per gallon. And it talks about the different technologies that are going to be used in order to get to that point.
Can I make a comment on the previous slide?
Sure.
Let me get to it.
The previous slide is the air, yeah, here. I listened to a talk at MIT that argued that contrails is a significant impact, climate impact of air travel. And in the talk, it was argued that this is even comparable to the direct emissions. So electrifying aircraft without addressing that issue of contrails is just part of the job.
Okay. Well, I can't talk to that one because that has nothing to do with the fuels. The contrails are a result of the pressure being reduced at the tips of the aircraft, and part of what's been changing is airfoils. Bernie might know more about this than I do. In order to get rid of that, because that's part of what decreases the efficiency of the aircraft as well.
Well, yeah, it's turbulence, and it's condensation of the moisture that's in the air is all it is. But if it reflects or heat, that could be a factor, I suppose. I would think like clouds, it would reflect heat away from the earth, however, just as much as back in. So I don't know if that's going to be an issue or not.
Yeah, I'd like to hear that talk as well, because that reason is that clouds do both things. Water is absolutely a greenhouse gas, but at the same time, when it manifests itself as a cloud, it reflects the solar radiation away from the planet substantially. I don't know what the differences between them. John, you have your hand up.
Well, I was just going to comment that I'm surprised that you're not mentioning the fact that there's a significant amount of water vapor being added to the slipstream, and that is part of the contrail.
Is it?
But, well, yeah, there's a lot of water produced in combustion, both with hydrogen. When hydrogen burns, it produces water. That's the result. And you know,
well, this isn't hydrogen.
no, I'm talking about any hydrocarbon or hydrogen.
Okay.
You know, so moisture is a huge part of the thing. So I think that's a lot of what's in the contrail as well.
Anyway, what was interesting about this, and go on to the next slide, was that two down from there.
This one.
Go on, yeah. Now I start looking at the e-fuels. This is all from one article, because some of these articles are really jam-packed. And getting the cost of e-fuels down. And what's really interesting about e-fuels are produced from carbon monoxide, hydrogen, and oxygen. And the carbon monoxide is, carbon monoxide is actually sourced from carbon dioxide. So essentially, in the production of e-fuels, this is actually a sequestration activity. It's sequestering the carbon dioxide that's in the atmosphere back into fuels for the aircraft. So it starts being part of a cycle. So we'll see where this one goes. And there's multiple methods now of doing this. And the real question is, which one will get us to the lowest cost and the best capture?
Next one.
Yeah, actually, and you look at the cost drop there too. We're looking about a 50% drop in that cost. And at that point, it's still more expensive. It's more expensive than jet fuel was. So I would look that up too, where jet fuel has gone over the last 3 months, and it's doubled in price. So at this point, once they reduce the cost of e-fuels by 50%, it'd actually be less expensive than jet fuel. This is a long article also on batteries and where they're going. And I thought it's interesting. Don't know how many of you attend the Storage X seminars that Stanford has. It's just so much happening with batteries. Tesla, is already looking at moving away from a lithium ion to lithium iron phosphate. And it turns out that, and a number of companies working on this, that once you got rid of the infrastructure required to make lithium ion safe, that lithium iron phosphate turns out to be pretty darn attractive. It has a much longer life, more than 3 times, 4 times as far as the number of cycles. It has flashpoint, which is
Kevin Minell is a professor of aerostructure at MIT, and also given about all day.
Wait, I don't know where that came from.
It was from Zeno, and I muted him.
Ah. Okay. Okay. Anyway, the lost the thread. Just a second. Oh, so the other thing that happens with that. So now the flash point is 3 times higher. So the danger of fires disappears, and the chemicals that are used in are, except for the lithium, are really common. And lithium actually is a pretty common element, and we have multiple methods of getting it. Tesla, their 4680 promises a 54% cost reduction. They'll use that both in the lithium ion and in the lithium iron phosphate. Now, lithium iron phosphate they'll be using in all of their shorter range, lower cost vehicles because it has a worse energy density. BYD is only using lithium iron phosphate. GM's Ultium is lithium ion. They found a way of reducing the cost by changing the chemistry and the packaging. A lot of this, which is interesting, is how they're changing the packaging, putting less material in. A lot of what I've been listening to and reading about is the loss of lithium inventory inside of the batteries. And that's what's limiting the cells. And I talked about this earlier, where the lithium gets lost in the battery and it can't be used to move back. The ions can't move back and forth. CATL, who I've never heard of, their Kirin battery, reduced the cost through integrating how they integrate into a pack. And there's a number of presentations at Stanford also on what people are doing in packs in order to reduce the cost of the batteries and make them smaller. That's why there's a lot of question as to whether Tesla has the right path, because most everybody else, in order to reduce the pack cost and the cost of the materials, are using pouches.
And CATL is the largest in the world.
The largest in the world. Thank you.
Yep.
QuantumScape, we talked about. SES, Solid Power, and Toyota are all looking at and working on solid state batteries. I saw another one just yesterday, Blue Energy, working on solid state. So we're going to see solid state showing up in multiple different forms, but they'll all be pouches also, I think. Coming back to this one, the batteries are changing so rapidly for this reason. EVs, cars, went from being negligible part of the battery demand to now 80% of the worldwide battery demand. So there's so much business opportunity. Everybody's researching, how do I get into this? It's the hot field that is replacing semiconductors. This one floored me. China has 90% of the world's battery production. I didn't realize that. Department of Energy has a 3.1 funding for battery manufacturing plants, not for research, for subsidizing plant development. And then I started looking at the different lithium ion. It turns out there's another lithium ion that's now showing up that adds aluminum and reduces the cost of producing lithium ion batteries by 40%. And CATL and this other company I looked at are now looking at sodium ion cells. And that turns out to be, it's likely to be popular when the lithium prices soar, because it has a weight issue, but we're now starting to get a lot of stationary applications as well. We'll see that in homes for storage and other places. I also put a little table on the side here to compare lithium iron phosphate to lithium ion. What are the differences as far as the characteristics?
David Harris, you had your hand up.
Yeah.
Too.
Well, Jerry, in the past, you have said things about investing, and I just wondered if you're found an ETF or something for any of these plays, like solid state, or whether you have any other comments. I mean, I think you said selling options was about as far deep.
Yeah, I mean, a friend of mine got all interested in QuantumScape. I was interested in QuantumScape. You know, I sell derivatives, and so I own QuantumScape at this point. When I was doing that, my friend was just starting with derivatives, and I said, yeah. And he said, well, they've got to be successful because, and I said, unless somebody else comes up with a different solid state, unless somebody comes up with an entirely different technology that makes solid state not very important. And no matter what, David, from an investing point of view, all of these will be 5 years away, because nobody will be making money in a solid state market, I don't think, in less than 5 years.
I'm curious about Ego, David. David and I are both on the Ego platform, right, for power tools, and those have lasted really well. So, you know, it's just, you don't know for sure when you're getting stuff, whether or not you're on the right chemistry or things are packaged well or something.
Well, there was the reason that I stayed with the Sonnen batteries and lithium iron phosphate. There's a lot of research out of Australia, because Australia is really well installed with stationary. And they had a large number of years and a lot of analysis on the different chemistries and how the batteries worked. And that's what shied me away from putting in the Tesla battery, although their chemistry has changed over time.
Yeah, yeah. So they're doing lithium ion phosphate for the power walls now as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, it just makes sense because the materials are easy to get and you really don't care about it. You know, that power wall might change in geometry by 5% when they're done with it. And alongside the house, it's going to be safer, it's going to last longer. The examples they had from Australia was that the power walls that were being installed didn't make it through the warranty period.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how many more you have, but we need to wrap up.
I don't think I have much more.
Okay, go for it.
So this one was just another article that was submitted talking about autonomous vehicles and the technologies required. And it turns out two of the ones that were interesting was better maps and more details of what's on the ground. Can I tell the difference between a person and a statue of a person? And you can only do that by putting it on a map. And then remote control as being important. And everybody's deciding that. And that's both here for this, but that also turns out it was showed up for all of the VTOL electric aircraft, having remote pilots who can jump in when the vehicle can't figure out what to do next. Go on.
I didn't know that. That makes sense.
Oh, yeah. And Brad sent this out. And so I decided to pull them up. These were the numbers we looked at, I think, last year of rollout of the ZEV population. And I just pulled up the numbers here for Sonoma County and for California. And we can see the impact of COVID, but the recovery in 2021 starting to show up. I don't know what happened in 2018, but that didn't happen in our county.
Yeah.
This is a great site, by the way, and the links down at the bottom. You can set the filters for different things and see what the numbers are. Pretty good for analysis.
Yeah, I was going through, I think the CRVP had, some fleet sales and other data, but maybe this site is better. It'd be good to.
Yeah, you can even do it by model and whatever else. And there's a bunch of things here.
Oh, great. I'm skipping forward. I think we're in good shape, but I did want to mention one thing at the very end of our slide deck here. For future months, depending on what we do in July, we'd like to make our Zoom link available on our website so that you can just come into the meeting. And we're going to work on that so that we're not necessarily formulating a different link every month. It'll be the same link across all the months. And we can always go to an admission process if we're concerned about, not, getting Zoom bombed, basically.
One of the things that Zoom changed recently was the waiting room was something that you had to set up when you set up the meeting. I believe it's now one of the controls. You can turn the waiting room on and off. So you can let people in, and if you feel like it's not working well, you can set up the waiting room, and then people have to request to come in.
Yeah, that's what I think, Cecilia, you were recommending, that what we could do is just not use the waiting room right away, but install it or turn it on if we have issue. So we could do it that way. And I think it affects all of us in that it's just a little easier to say, if you want to attend a meeting, you don't necessarily have to join our Google group and make some type of a small commitment of giving us your email address. You can just click the link and join and show up on our meeting day. And, for a county resident, that should work out fine.
The other thing we could do is, 5 minutes into the meeting, we turn on the waiting room, because everybody will have joined by that point in time. Somebody else who wants to come in. The problem was originally when Alan had it set up and I started doing it, I didn't know what the waiting room was. And here was everybody, and I spent all my time clicking, letting everybody in the meeting to start with until I read a little bit more.
Yeah. So small process improvements over time. Well, I think breaking out the news is really great, and looking forward to doing a little more of that going forward. But I'll report back to everybody real soon about our Holly options for next month. And otherwise, any last words from anyone? We did it on time.
I may do a mini presentation on some battery stuff that I saw recently that I thought was interesting, that Zeno and I talked about for why vehicles should have very short, small batteries.
I'd like to see that. I've always been curious about that, except for John's comment your battery lasts longer if it's bigger. I guess we'll leave it at that. Enjoy your.
You want to stop the recording and stay on so you and I can talk about a couple of technical problems I'm having?
Yeah.
I just want to show you.
Thank you, Sonia and Jerry.
Yes, thanks, everybody. See y'all.
Thanks, everybody.